magnificent people. You've heard of me speak about land acquisition using trust. You've probably read patron posts regarding how land is unique compared to any other structures with houses readily built on it, and how banks love to jump on them. Whereas land, they kind of stay away from it. Therefore, it's an open template. Literally, it's an open template for you to begin to acquire and simply pass on. You've probably also heard others, and in very few circumstances here on Patreon, you've heard me speak of legacy and passing on legacies. We're going to begin the revelation of how people actually do that. A parent can have something and know something where the child doesn't. What simply happens after that is it gets taken away from the child. Most people you see walking around with a family named Freeman, it is because at some point they did something that formally changed their status. All those things regarding PPMs and controlling the straw man, those type of people did it. But in today's world, you will see some everyday man carrying the title or the family name Freeman, and they are clueless to anything their family did once upon a time. Probably because maybe the sister did it, but they didn't get along with the other siblings, so she was what they considered the black sheep of the family. She freed herself, but she changed her last name and she gave birth to some other children, and well, all of them carried the name Freeman from that point. Or maybe he did it and he had a friend somewhere, but he didn't have any child, and his friend's children carried the name Freeman because his friend was also tagging along with him learning these things. But those children are clueless to what their parents did. The issue of legacy is the exact same way. You can do everything you are doing in your lifetime. Think about it. How many thousands of hours of video have you watched? How many hundreds, if not thousands of videos that you have watched, skimmed through? How many thousands of pages have you read when it comes to accumulation of information just to get a little bit of something to click and go, that's it? You really think your children are going to go through the same thing? And if they are, that's good. But do you really think they're going to get the opportunity to have the type of mind that you have to look into the details and to be led spiritually? Maybe they will be. But give them a little bit of helping hand by preserving certain things on a piece of paper. Because that is what most people's parents and their grandparents failed to do. If they knew it, and if they did it, the form of keeping records that we have now, which is cloud storage, which is technological luxury, and many more forms that are coming where you can create your own private server that stays in-house. They never had that. All those papers they signed and had, it's somewhere either burned or buried or just sitting in someone else's archive. They're going, whoa, hopefully these people don't somehow start trying to trace these things back, because if they do, well, all the evidence is here that they own all the shit. You have a luxury beyond those people back then to actually preserve integrity of information, such as videos like these. I've mentioned this in the past videos, but I don't know about you. If you're not creating video instructions for your future generations, you're not doing something right. This is not to make you feel guilty, but just to bring in awareness that, look, you should be doing something. Because all this effort that you're doing, it should not just go to waste in the future. Make it last. Legacies will not exist until something lasts. On the note of acquiring land acquisition, legacies will never exist unless it's put in trust. But here is a secret that many people who truly comprehend what that word legacy is, beyond some cute motivational speech that you see on Instagram, beyond someone eating some fruits and glistening, talking about legacy, or sitting on some yachts, just for that moment while the camera is on. Beyond all that, the stuff they will not tell you is what we're about to begin to reveal in this video. This is the stuff that Bill Gates, all those people that the everyday man don't like, all those 1%, this is what they do and what they know. And this is also your birthright. Information is your birthright. Patent. We're going to go over a few words. We're going to go over what patent is. We're going to go over what lease is. We're going to go over what public land is. We're going to go over what quit claim is. We're going to go over what title is. Quit title, aka quiet title. Because all these things go hand in hand. And then we're going to go over about 3 or 4 separate case laws that affirms the fact of what patents really are. But before that, let me give you a quick background history of patents. Specifically, land patents. Because remember, intellectual properties such as trademarks and copyright are categorized or housed under a similar family of what a patent is. Meaning you create a shovel and you market it in places whereby it's always snowing. Canada, you go all over the world, good. I start to realize this is taking off real good. It's only a matter of time before someone snatches it. So you trademark it. That's categorized as patent, intellectual property. That same security of property on an intellectual level, did you know you can do the same thing for land? There's a saying that land does not rot. That's because it has the greatest value. Although when it comes to things like taxes, you cannot claim depreciation on land unless you start to put things on it, because they know that land don't rot. But the things that you add on it does. And then there are other things whereby you can zone it however you want. You can subdivide it however you want, absent of any local municipality. The history of land patent in America has its origin in the whole Go West young man thing. This Go West young man mentality is based on something they call manifest destiny, where they say, look, we're going to come over here, whatever we want, we're going to take it. Because the ones who were natural inhabitants here, the Moors here, they function at a certain level of ecclesiastic principle that sees everything as one. They don't see humans as the, quote, top of the food chain, like most modern European concept will tell you about, either in just a layman conversation or even in their implemented form of what they call science, which has some truth in it. But for the most part, it's just some bias just to cover up a lot of insecurities, which we're not here to deal with. Manifest destiny says, look, we're on top of the food chain, whether it be amongst other living beings, which include other humans, or other living beings, which include other life forms such as animal, the airspace, the tangible and intangible thing. So we're going to keep moving a certain direction, and we'll take it all and we'll kill all of you. But the Moors here prior, later categorized as Indians, later categorized as black people, they had a uniform state of mind whereby they did not see humans as top of the food chain, rather part of the food chain itself. They comprehend that once the spirit or soul leaves the body, the physical body gets eaten up by the earth itself, rejuvenates it, and through that they can conjure up the ancestral spirits whenever they want, if it has yet to reincarnate, to continue its journey by using its own bloodline as a conduit. They had that type of system. Therefore, land ownership was not destiny. Did not even want to understand it. So they said, we're just going to take over it. But in the process of them attempting to do so, they also realized that they don't know the terrain. And the people that they already found here were better warriors than they are. There's a lot of journals about that by Columbus himself and by the first few American presidents. I basically list all the different types of tribes and says these people will have some skill on the horse and just in battle that's just different from ours. We can never beat them. Therefore, we have no choice but to get one of them, aka one of the feudal confederacies that are already pre-existed, to assist us and betray one another. That's how they kick the asses of the Moors here. If that's not clear, they use one of you against you. But before all of that, remember, the Go West young from that part of the world, the thieves, the burglar, the murderer, the rapist, basically the mischiefs of society, they gave them a promise that, look, if you can go over there and kill these people for us, you can take whatever land you want. That happened over a span of a few generations. It wasn't just something that occurred 10, 20 years. No, it took a good amount of time before they could even have the courage to even utter that word manifest destiny. And that initiation of them releasing all the mischiefs from that part of the world and dumping them here, called insertion and extraction. It's the process of putting some type of force of arms. In today's world, they use private military companies that they hire. But back then, they just used to use murderers, thieves, and pillagers. Those who just have nothing to lose. And they just use them as a mercenary, literally. That's what Piracy Act, aka Transportation Act of 1717, accomplished. It was an act of the Parliament of Great Britain that established a regulated bonded system to transport criminals to colonies in North America for indentured service. I'm not making this up. These are things you can cross-reference yourself. This indentured service is not what you think it is. Remember when I mentioned earlier that this Transportation Act of 1717 was the original transatlantic slave trade? I meant it. The true slaves that came over the Atlantic, as preserved by true record rather than speculation and make-believe through some Hollywood enactment or some trash of illustration that really has no preponderance of evidence behind it. What you can look at and trace back based on laws and legislatures, internationally and nationally, when it comes to transatlantic slave trade. It's called the Transportation Act of 1717. And it had nothing to do with people who had broad lips or broad nose. And the whole purpose of this was military insertion. And make no mistake, this indentured service is war. Fight for your freedom. It's not one of those things you see in Hollywood, picking cottons, master whipping you. All that is pure trash. Transportation Act of 1717 was an act of the Parliament of Great Britain that established a regulated bonded system. Meaning, look, if you don't do this, you will remain this way. But if you do it, you're free. To transport criminals, specifically criminals, it mentions nothing else. It mentions nothing about a prisoner of war. It mentions nothing about some type of bureaucrat who people just didn't like and thus was taken advantage of and kidnapped and thrown into some other part of the world. It mentioned nothing about some prince who was abandoned from his country and then was turned a slave and then had to buy back his freedom. Now, there are a few instances of those, but it's not as common as you think. To transport criminals to colonies in North America for indentured service. This indentured service is military service. Fight or die. If you fight, you survive, cool, we can take this land. It's the same system that the Mongols used when they raided the entire Eurasia and dominated everyone. That's how they got the Koreans to fight for them. That's how they got the Chinese to fight for them. And they dominated everyone in Eurasia, at least until they met the Mamluks, which is another Moorish empire which shut them down. Well, the Great Britons decided, you know what, we'll learn from that, but we'll do it our own way. We'll take our criminals here who have no life, nothing to lose, and actually want to kill people. We'll use them and insert them in another part of the world to accomplish our goals, while we sit back and preserve our military might and study the battle format of these North American, whose culture is slightly different from ours. Because remember, I use that qualifying term slightly because the culture in the world and the entire earth is the same thing. The form in which it chooses to express itself is different. Everyone, one way or the other. For instance, the Fez. Every culture, one way or the other, over the world, no matter what they look like. Whether they're pale with wide eyes, or pale with tiny eyes, or dark with tiny eyes, or dark with wide eyes. Whatever the physical attributes are. Whatever the way they speak, what they eat, what they look like, what they act like, they all have the Fez. Because the foundational principles of the cosmos is what's embedded in that. The form in which they express itself based on the part of the world which has its own flow of light force depend on the varying degrees of how the Fez will be expressed. No different than loose clothing, cotton clothing, all that. No different than arts of war. Same thing, but just slight variation based on how life expressed itself in that part of the world. Great Britain did the same thing when it comes to art of war, but in their own way, by inserting their criminals in another part of the world, rather than waste military power, military might, and resource. They claim their own society there at the same time, infiltrate another. That's a win-win situation. Transportation Act of 1717 was an act of Parliament of Great Britain that established a regulated bonded system to transport criminals to colonies in North America for indentured service as punishment for those convicted or attained. Attainder, or to be attained, is a process of slavery. Whenever you see this word attained or attainder, like the Constitution say, no bill of attainder shall be passed, it basically says you ain't shit, you're my slave, you have no right to anything, I own you. Simple as that. It's just a legalese word for you're a slave. In Great Britain, excluding Scotland. Remember, Great Britain is the coming together of the English and the Scots. England and Scotland, that's what Great Britain is. So specifically, these criminals were English. They were not Scots. The act established a 7-year transportation sentence to a punishment for people convicted of lesser felonies, those under the benefit of clergy, and a 14. You have to do something. You have to do better than your parents did. You have to do better than you did previously 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, a week ago. Because why not? What are you doing here on earth if you're not doing better? Remember, everything that's found in a horse, a pig, a cow, a dog, and a cat can be found in a human being. All those blood, fat, muscle, they all have it. The only difference between you and all those flesh and blood, which a lot of people want to claim to be flesh and blood, the only difference between you, a human being, a human soul, compared to any other flesh and blood, is the human mind that the divine creator has placed in you, which makes you its perfected creation. Put it to use beyond just waking up and sleeping and breathing on a mundane level. Do something functional. Leave an impact so that thing called freedom, you could at least take a step forward and pull everyone there without them being born yet. And if they're already born, you're doing something now to assist them. And even if you don't have children, not a problem. There's a way you can set things up whereby only certain people can qualify for it. And guess what? The issue of land grant exists because someone in the past had done that exact same thing. As the highest evidence of title, a patent is a deed. They just told you two things. That patent is the highest evidence of title. Because the biggest boss, when you, for instance, play games, you go through some mini bosses, then you go through the last boss. The last boss, when it comes to interest of ownership, is the United States, whereby they can come and say, we're going to take your shit. And the highest evidence of title against them when it comes to real property or the interest to it, called real estate. The highest evidence of title is patent. Why? Because 2, a patent is a deed. Right there, they just told you. It's no different than a quitclaim deed, but in a form of self-confession by the one giving it to you that you will have all the interest. And it's enforceable against me by virtue of that. As the highest evidence of a title, a patent is a deed by which the government conveys title to public lands. Meaning the presumption is that all these things out here are public lands, as we've read. That's the reason why we read those keywords. A patent must be issued in order for the fee to public lands to pass from the government. Fee is a form of title, like fee simple. A patent is intended to quiet title to. Quiet title, as we've read and shown, is a type of suit. But this act of patent itself is equivalent to that power. A patent is intended to quiet title to and secure the enjoyment of the land for the patentees, meaning the one who the patent has been granted upon, and their successor, meaning if it's through a trust, it's undisputable. their successor part, they're not going to tell you, look, do it through trust, okay? Otherwise, you're screwed. Why must you do a land patent through a trust? Because if the land patent just has your personal name on it and you pass away, your children can say they're your heirs, but that's disputable because two people can carry the same last name without necessarily actually being a direct bloodline. Why? People can change their names. There are case laws and all these things. You now see the importance of trust. You now see the reason why they always say trust is related to, quote, estate planning. Estate means interest planning. This part where they say a patent is intended to quiet title and secure the enjoyment of the title of the land for the successors. This successor part is they're telling you trust. This term successor is a trust terminology. The presumption is you listening to this know that you're dealing with trust issue, and that whenever land patent is done, it must always be done through proper trust. Again, 508 publicly based on the religious First Amendment right tying into the Constitution and what they're obligated to. And then first lien holder constituted a conveyance by the United States of its interests. Again, estate in the word interest, same thing. In the property. The transfer of the Servian estate by patent constituted a conveyance by the United States of its interest in the property. Therefore, the situation presented here is analogous to that of a private landowner's transfer by quitclaim deed. The U.S. acknowledges private individuals. A trust is an individual. A trust is a natural person, and it is private. This article is telling you that the United States is willing to do business with a private trust or firm. Firms are just another fancy word for trust, aka business trust. Through land patents. That's exactly what I'm showing you here. Many land patents are designed for private individuals. If you say you're black, you can complain all you want. Complain about something being done to your progenitors, whether or not that's actually factual or not, whether or not you're voluntarily enslaving yourself by making those assertions or not, is not what we're saying here. But you can make all the complaints all you want. You can have all the sense of entitlement all you want. If you don't know how the system works, it will just gradually fade away, step at a time. And the next thing that the next generation can ever do is cry, whine, and complain. No different than what's going on today. All these people in today's world crying and whining, at the end of the day, they really gain anything from it beyond people being bribed in the back end. You see people stand on podium on news stations. At the end of the day, what is the solution? Nothing. They just took that moment to just show a little game that they're playing while they're busy lying to one another just to say, ha, look, we just yelled and screamed. But other people from other part of the world, whether they look like you or not, when they see that, all they're seeing is, oh, great, again. Look at them playing charades again. Look at them fooling one another. Your own people, they put faces that look like you, the minority so-called, to lie to you by playing the game of complaining and constantly embedding victim mentality into you rather than showing you, look, this is how this stuff works. Go ahead and do it. No more victim mentality. You deserve better than that. Playing victim does not make you strong. It's a sign of weakness. Affirmation for other people to treat you like shit. The more you complain and bitch about something, the more you're basically saying, yes, this is my position. Go ahead and stick it to me. That's what you're saying. Especially someone who has a state of mind predominantly to take advantage of you and they've been conditioned to do so, and they know this system compared to you. They'll say, sure, I'll take advantage of you. That's what these people are doing. Instead of you complaining, know how the system works. Because the system, believe it or not, was designed to be perfectly beneficial to you. Don't you hear people say that the United States government is the public trustee? Right. Specifically, the clerk of the General Land Management, aka public land. Once more, the least you cannot say if someone is not explaining these things and showing it to you step at a time. The people on Patreon already know the intricacies of certain trust and certain things that I'm mentioning here. And if you think you know about trust just because you hear that buzzword all the time, and you're stepping into this without knowing a lot of details when it comes to certain tests and when it comes to certain trust minutes, very, very specific trust minutes, then you're really shortchanging yourself. But then again, I'll keep repeating it. The least you cannot say is someone is not showing you this. It is your birthright to be free. It is your birthright to have material possession. Use of material possession. It's one of the things that actually measures the quality of a soul. Believe it or not. As much as people want to run away from material things to say you can only do things in the spiritual realm by detachment, yes, that is very true. But remember, as above, so below. What people are seeking is actually true freedom when they try to detach. Be as free as possible from things. But if you keep forgetting the principles of correspondence and you constantly keep running to one side of the polarity, and you're not balanced, not only will you suffer, but so will your children. And most likely, you'll keep coming back to this earth without really completing your goal. Complete our 30-minute videos posted on the Patreon page. Take care. Best of luck.